Welcome to Too Much Review, a weekly podcast by Open Letter at 3%. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books. We talk every week about a book, break it down section by section, go through it slowly but surely. And for this season, we are doing all 3 volumes of Vernon's SUBUTEX by Virginie Despentes. And I am joined as always by co-host Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
That was a very unprofessional open. And
you tricked me.
I am ashamed to be a part of this, but I'm here anyways.
I'm re-recording that. And we are joined by special guest this week, Emma Ramadan, the translator of several books, and most notably recently, the winner of the PEN Translation Award for Abdallah Taya's A Country for Dying, but also more coming out, I guess it's this month, isn't it? Or next month is Garreta's next book, In Concrete.
Next month, yeah.
It is next month. Okay. I don't know what month it is right now, so.
It's coming out May 11th.
Oh, perfect. And Emma is the co-founder of Riff Raff Bookstore in Providence, Rhode Island, where they are selling books outside in the rain.
That's correct, yeah. Only when it rains.
Only when it rains. Don't do it any other time. So I've been thinking about your bookshop. I have a suggestion. Okay. Now,
congratulations, by the way. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Congrats, for sure. All
right, go ahead. Make fun of her now.
Okay, no, this isn't to make fun. So you're not involved in this Dogecoin, whatever the fuck it is, the cryptocurrency thing, right?
No, absolutely not.
So Kaya had invested in Dogecoin like some months ago for some random reason on the Robinhood app that I always talk about in here, which is kind of a scam and whatever. Anyways, she had some of this, and it was one of the ones that was targeted by Reddit to explode. So she went from she bought like $15 and made like $700 on this. And yesterday it shot up again. She sold another $100 worth of her stock. And I was ranting about how dumb this is because you can't fucking use this. It's not money. You can't use Dogecoin anywhere. And you know where you can use Dogecoin? There's like 3 places that I could find. One of them is Pornhub. So I was thinking, what you should do is accept these cryptocurrencies for sale, but then they're just an investment. So you would be getting the money for the sale in a coin that will expand in price or in worth, theoretically, especially at this moment in time. So if someone gave you $15 worth of Dogecoin, it'll be like $400 next week, and you'll have made way more than you would have accepting this boring old paper money.
But that relies on it not crashing, and also sounds really devastatingly complicated, and also like how unbelievably weird for a bookstore of all places to be the place. But I was reading today about how apparently cryptocurrency is so bad for the environment. We've undone every good thing we did for the environment by mining cryptocurrency.
It's not even it's not it's a blockchain thing.
Yeah. It's just so bad for the planet. And you don't think about that because it's not real and it's all fake and on the internet, but it's destroying our planet.
Well, no,
so I'd rather not.
It's 100% in Neil Stephenson's Cryptonomicon, of all things, but it's pro that. It's pro cryptocurrency. That book fucking sucks too. I don't care who's listening, who's a Neil Stephenson fan, but it's a very pro cryptocurrency thing, and that shows up in that book and is writ in there. And I remember 5 years ago, Brian, remember when we met with the guy that was doing the new magazine in New York when we did one of these live in New York, and we asked him about what the scope was for the magazine. I can't remember any of the details right now. And he's like, I know people are mad at us because we're only paying people in cryptocurrencies and they're concerned about the blockchain environment thing, but it's really not that big of a deal.
Oh, I was so hungover.
I remember. Dude, that's why I remember those 3 details.
Oh, stop talking. I'm dying. I'm done. My head is dying.
Sweating from.
I gotta go get on a 10-hour train ride in an hour. Stop.
Anyway, that's my suggestion, to convert bookstores from simple cash exchanges into a way of making it into an investment portfolio that will explode your wealth.
I feel like this is the Strand will do this soon, and then
that would totally make sense. That would But it also feels a little bit like this book where it's a little bit of a scam on top of a scam. But anyway, so Emma, aside from your translation, someone in the comments just mentioned that they read your translation of Revenge of the Translator and loved it.
Thank you.
There's that. But also you are one of the other translators of Virginie Despentes.
Yeah, I'm one of many.
Yeah. So how did you come to you did Pretty Things, and how did you come to translate Pretty Things, and what's your relationship to her work as a whole?
So, sorry, my cat is wants to be involved. To be honest, I'll just tell the real story, which is that Will Evans of Deep Vellum came to me and said, there's this Virginie Despentes book that no one's done in English. I mean, there's lots, but specifically this one called Les Jolies Choses, which is Pretty Things. Will you read it, do a report of it, tell me if you want to translate it? And I was obsessed with this book. I was so into it. I did a sample, I did a pitch. I was like just really excited about it. And then Will decided it would be stepping on Feminist Press toes to do it and encouraged me to just go straight to them with it, which I did. And I think when I approached them, they were open to a different translator for Virginie Despentes. I think I was really young at the time, and now I would be more hesitant to pitch an author that someone else has already been translating, but they were open to it, and that's sort of how it went. And did I answer all your questions? My relationship to her work as a whole, I'm just a big fan of her. I read King Kong Theory. That was the first thing I had read of hers years before pitching Pretty Things, and had sort of been like very excited about her and her work, and was really excited to have the chance to translate a novel of hers. And yeah.
And so you've read basically all of her stuff.
There's a couple of things that haven't been translated that I haven't read, but most of it, yeah.
So you're the well-versed one on this podcast. Except you haven't finished the last two parts of this.
No, and I read the first one years ago, and I was refreshing my memory today with the French, but you'll have to forgive me if I don't remember all the details.
Yeah, that's quite okay. Like Brian can fill that in. He's the detail man.
Oh yeah.
What was the experience like translating her? Did you work with her at all?
No, she's like way too much of a big shot. I had no contact with her. All I know is that Feminist Press had to have her approve me. So she had to approve my sample. And then once she approved my sample, I had no contact with her. And there were a couple of people who reached out to me and Virginie Despentes to ask if we would do an interview, like when the book came out. And she never responded to any of the emails. And so there were like a couple of things that I did on my own. Right. But she's just like too cool, you know. I don't blame her. If I didn't have to publicize anything, I wouldn't either. It sucks. So I don't blame her. But yeah, I didn't have really any contact with her.
Interesting.
Sorry, that's not a very good response. It would have been.
No, I actually knew this story because we taught the book. We had this conversation.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I have no memory.
We did. I taught that book in my class a couple years ago, and we recorded it ahead of time.
Okay.
And I remembered that part of this too, that she's super cool. But for people who are listening to this, who obviously were never in my class, I thought it'd be interesting to know like what she's like as an author from your perspective, or from as one of the other translators.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's writing French books in a way that not many people are, which is why she's so exciting. I think, she's writing spoken French on the page. She's writing very like gritty, interesting language. She's writing about like real life in Paris for certain groups of people. A certain group, right? It's like she's always writing about mainly white characters, mainly like kind of down and out on the margins, the like punk scene, the whatever scene, music adjacent scenes. But she also has some like very intense work. I don't know if people have read Baise-moi, which has been translated, I don't think it's Rape Me.
It's not translated. Yeah.
They leave the title?
The title. Yeah.
Okay.
It is Rape Me, right? Like that would be.
It could be Rape Me. It could be other things, but it's Rape Me.
Sell it at Walmart.
Well,
it's like a Nirvana trademark or something.
I think that makes sense that they left the title in French because that way it's less offensive. But I mean, she just writes like really powerfully different things that showcase different walks of life, and does it in a way that feels very authentic, very raw, very interesting. Pretty Things was about the relationship between two twin sisters, one of whom dies and the other like takes her place. So it doesn't have much to do with this book, except that it like revolves around the music scene and what it means to be a woman in the music scene. And, there's like sexual assault in that. And there's a lot of just like the reality of what it means to be like a 20-something-year-old woman in Paris, in the same way that this book is about the reality of, you know, being a washed out music guy in Paris. And so I think, you know, there's something really different about her going on there, but there's like this connective thread between all of her books too.
Yeah. I wasn't, okay, so I couldn't remember. I didn't look this back up, but I know, I was wondering if a couple characters from here showed up and they're like Pamela, but Pamela doesn't.
It's
right?
the hyena.
The hyena doesn't in
Apocalypse Baby. Yeah.
But like if you had told me that Laurent Dopalet, or however you say his name, was one of the record people mentioned in Pretty Things, I'd been like, oh, that totally tracks. That would be but I think it's just like a sort of prototype.
Totally. And I think it's like different ways of talking about the same scene, essentially. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's not like explicit overlap in characters.
But the hyena is one.
The hyena is one with Apocalypse Baby, which I know that's Tom's favorite of all of her books, and not necessarily my favorite, but it's a good one.
That's funny. I believe that Sarah Kramer told me that that wasn't her favorite either. But Pretty Things is my favorite, I think. Well,
really?
No, trilogy as a whole, and Pretty Things as a book. So the two.
Thanks.
Two next to each other. Oh yeah, I remember. I love that book. We talked about it a lot last week on this too. Mm. What did you think when you read Vernon Subutex the first time in French, compared to her other stuff?
I mean, I read it in English originally.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And I remember thinking that it must have been a nightmare to translate. In a way that, like, I think. I've talked before on the internet about how with Pretty Things, I let myself not try to imitate how much slang she used, because I don't think it necessarily always translates. Like there's slang words for things in French that work, that like are very common that we don't do in English. So like the verlan in French, where they reverse the syllable sounds. So like le nez means nose. And so people can say like le zen instead of le nez, and that's like slang for nose. Like we don't have slang words for nose, so I'm not going to say like the schnoz or whatever weird fucking word just to like have an equivalent there of slang. So I basically shed probably about 40% of the slang in Pretty Things where it didn't feel natural, and like tried to work it in other places, but there's probably overall less slang. And in this book, I just remember thinking like, oh my God, the whole point of this book is the slang, is the like language, is the like abbreviations, the way that this like not it's not a dialect, but in a way it kind of is a dialect of like this scene of people. And so I just remember thinking like, I don't know how I would have tackled that as a translator who feels very concerned with like not liking trying to force equivalence, but in this book you have to sort of do that a little bit. And I don't know, I just remembered being very overwhelmed by how much of that grittiness and that like street character of the language was in this book.
I hadn't thought of this until you said the street language a couple of times, that Céline is like someone that would be in this sort of circle of influence for her as well, I assume.
I've never read Céline.
Oh.
I have a lot of gaps in my canon.
No, I'm just kidding. Céline's great, but like also like for reasons that don't need to be gone into here, probably not someone that many people are reading these days for like the anti-Semitism part of his life. But During the End of the Night and Death on the Installment Plan were like really much based in that idea of like how the people on the street talk, what the real life is, not this prettified French genteel sort of way of doing things, but gritty and gross and you know, very propulsive. It has that sort of thing. So
Emma, can I ask you, when you were doing Virginie's work, did you rely on your ear a lot to help you with those choices, or?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of reading it out loud because there was a lot of dialogue in Pretty Things, but I've talked about this online too, that my editor, whose name is Lauren Hook, and she's fantastic. She's still at Feminist Press. She's the best. She and I had a lot of phone calls, or like one really long phone call where we would read some of the scenes out loud to each other if something was like not quite working, and we would try to figure out how we would say it, because it's like mostly young women talking, and I wanted it to sound like anything the characters were saying, I wanted it to feel natural coming out of my own mouth. Like, oh yeah, I would say something like this. So I was doing a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay.
That's interesting. So Brian, what did you think now that you have the book?
Yeah.
You have the last week's episode was fun since you hadn't been able to read any of it. Now, what do you think now?
No, it reads really fast, which is super helpful. I had a big chunk to take care of today. I can see why it's an author that people are so attracted to the work she's putting out. I think with this one, what I really like a lot is a lot of times in the, I guess, like, for lack of a better term, like in literary fiction, it can be a little too clever or like trying too hard. And I really like this because I think with this text, at least, is all I know of, is that it presents itself very kind of plainly and just there. And then it's the voice and the characters that really kind of, I think for me, like really suck me in and make me interested in it more so than the actual like artifice of what it is. And like so often with literary texts, I myself too wanted to be a literary author, right? Like I want to be clever or cool or interesting, or how can I spin this in a neat way? And she's like, fuck that. I'm just going to do it like straight ahead. And I'm going to show you what it is. And I really like that. It's kind of like punk rock, right? Where it's edgy and just driving and simple, but that's what's great about it.
Listening to the music that I associate with these voices in this time has rewritten my Spotify algorithm, and it's such a very severe degree that it's damaging my eardrums even further than it was before, and I love it. So I'm there. But
how about you? Having read the majority of her work, what is so attractive when you're reading her work?
I mean, I was most attracted to King Kong Theory for the theory in it. I mean, theory, quote unquote. It's like a very accessible version of like a manifesto about gender relations. And I think that's kind of exactly why I was so into it, is that it was, you know, a kind of, it's a nonfiction book. It's meant to be really powerful and it's really intelligent, but it is really accessible. Anyone can read it. Anyone can pick it up. I could sell it to like an 18-year-old and they would get a lot out of it, the same as like a 45-year-old who has studied, you know, gender dynamics for their PhD or something. And I think what she does is so good. I think I've talked to Chad about this before. It's that it feels like you're reading a beach read. Like they go really quickly. They're really pulpy. They're really fun. Yeah. But she's doing so much, and she's doing so many really kind of under the surface things that then when you get to the end, you're like, whoa, I get it. Like she did this thing that like, she didn't have to hit me over the head with it, but I got it. And I had fun reading these books, but they're doing kind of like they're saying important things in a fun package. And I think that that's like a very nice sweet spot that you don't often get, especially not in translation. Yeah. I mean, a lot of books in translation, how dare we pitch books that are fun, right? Like everything needs to be about trauma and death and war.
This is something I've been sort of half joking about writing about is like this seeking for sorrow in literary translation, because all funny books don't get reviewed or treated the same way at all in translation. Mm-hmm. And there was a famous Twitter rant this past weekend about translation that I'm sure you're aware of. And I went and read that person's back of their book, and I was like, fuck, no, I don't need more of this in my life. Like, I want to have fun. Why can't any of these books be fun? Why can't anything be enjoyable anymore?
But that's like more up to you as publisher than it is up to me as translator.
Yeah. But like our funniest book still hasn't gotten very much attention because it's not about, you know, war and trauma.
Yeah.
You have a funny book?
Yeah, the John Irby book is hilarious, man. But yeah, it is something that runs throughout a lot of like the treatment, not just from the publisher's angle of what they pick, it seems, but also like the reception. Like we expect these things to be serious, and she does buck that convention. She
bucks that convention in a really nice way, and I don't know. I think not to get too far off of her, but just to complete this rant that you've started, I think, you know, because translations are expensive to do, because they're such an investment, because people think they don't sell as well, blah, blah, blah. There's this idea that like, okay, I need to be buying books in translation that have a good chance of winning a prize, of getting a serious New York Times review, of getting this, of getting that, which means people are looking for the books that are like what we consider prize-worthy, which equates to war, trauma, etc. And then it just is this bad cycle where we say books in translation don't sell. Well, yeah, because people want fun books. People want fun, interesting books. They don't want to read about war and trauma all the time. And so, like, you know, Elena Ferrante has been, you know, through the roof in sales. And that's a fun trilogy. It's not about trauma, war. And, like, Virginie Despentes, too, is in that vein. And, like, if we could just, if publishers were more interested in investing in, like, fun, exciting, sexy books in translation, or like just books about like friendship and love and whatever, like maybe they would sell more, and then we could break this cycle of talking about translations not selling. So I don't know. I think it's a bad spiral we're caught in, and hopefully Virginie Despentes can break us out of it.
And post pandemic can break us out of it. I think that after this, people are gonna be like, we've had a rough time. Like I would like to enjoy.
Yeah.
That. I would like to enjoy a thing again.
Like, you just want to have a nice, relaxing movie night. Just pick the movie that has all those little award winners for all the small film festivals. That's going to be a great, just relaxing movie to watch, right? Or you want the one where someone has like a robot arm and like an explosion, but I'm like, oh, that might be more like I can turn my brain off and enjoy that quite a bit, actually, right? But the translation is all the pomme d'or. A Palestinian refugee makes its way to, like, oh, geez, I'm going to read at the beach.
So as a segue, as a segue between,
let's have some more fun, more. That's yeah. But it's like, you know, if you want to win the Oscar, though, you have to do the Holocaust movie. Like it can't be one about baseball or something.
Right.
For shame. To segue between that and the book, have you watched the TV show?
I thought it was a movie. Oh wait, sorry. Oh, sorry. You mean the TV show of this? Yeah. I'm thinking of the movie of Pretty Things because I have a big ego apparently. No, is it good? I don't know how to watch it.
It's on a streaming platform called Topic, which I'd never heard of before. Caitlin Luce Baker told me about it, and I have it open to like do a 7-day subscription, but I wanted to reread this first because I assume that it's only covering like a portion of the trilogy. I don't know, but it's like maybe 6 or 7 episodes, and it's on something called Topic, which
you have to
could
pay
be
for it.
anything.
I don't have a lot of investment in buying new streaming platforms these days.
Yeah, that's the trial. That's why I'm like, I'll binge watch this when I have 7 days because I'm sure that the rest of Topic's programming is like fucking interesting.
If I read the book, I better not have to read subtitles too, Chad. That's a total.
Oh, you're right. I don't know if it's for French or I don't know what it is.
I'm sure it's in French.
I would assume so too,
Yeah.
but I don't know why. Like, it doesn't look like it on their presentation of it.
Weird.
Which American actor would you have played Vernon, do you think?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Paul Giamatti. Paul Giamatti is
But he's supposed to be sexy.
And Paul Giamatti is kind of sexy.
All right. You and I have different types, I think.
Daniel Day-Lewis seems too old to me, is the thing I was thinking.
Okay.
Chad only likes him because of the baseball connection. Like his dad was a commissioner of baseball or something like that.
Absolutely.
That's
sure. and he's super funny in that one episode of that Chris Gethard show. Those are the two things I like. So to talk about this section, our first part, so to get you up to speed, Emma, so that you know where we are in this too, since the page numbers don't always match. The first section that we read was about Laurent. Is it Dopalet? Is how you would say that?
Sure.
Go with
it. You know French. You're supposed
to.
But
I'm not looking at his name in the book right now. So
Dopalet.
Yeah.
Okay, so Laurent Dopalet, who is a producer, a music producer, and sort of like an overall producer. He's like a media magnate and wants to be very popular, wants to be very powerful, and had a public beef and private beef with Alex Bleach before his death. And this is really this is the first time that the real conflict is set up that will be the kind of MacGuffin to drive the rest of this trilogy. Is that last week we talked about how Bleach, before he died, recorded this like last will and testament or confession, as they start referring it to here, on Vernon Subutex's couch, and left the tapes with Vernon. So Vernon has the tapes in his possession from the time shortly before Bleach died. Dopalet becomes convinced that these tapes have something to do with him, and he wants to know what they are. And he only finds out about them in this section because he's at one of these fancy parties and meets a screenwriter who's trying to like get in with him. And he's like, no, but he hears about the Bleach tapes and comes interested and won't give him his card or anything because he's like, this fucker's going to send me like 42 scripts that are all terrible and annoying. So then he has his assistant, whose name is Audrey. Or no, is it Audrey or is it Anise? She is supposed to go find him. And then they hire the hyena in a bit to go find Xavier, the scriptwriter, who is fat and bald and knew Alex Bleach.
Can you find a fat bald guy named Xavier?
in Paris? And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? How can you do that?
So all of that is before page 86?
No, that is starting at page 86.
Oh, got it. Yes, okay.
So the first part here is that part. Dopalet becomes the villain, not to give too much away, but essentially is kind of the villain of this and does have those hallmarks from the start because he's very pretentious. He's like kind of creepy old man. He's 50, which is referenced here, which I missed the first time. I kept thinking of him as like a 75-year-old, like Rupert Murdoch sort of creep, or what's that other guy, Roger Ailes, or one of those creeps. But this guy is a 50-year-old creep, which is a little bit like worse, maybe. I don't know.
Probably a 30-year-old creep at some point too.
Probably a 30-year-old creep at some point too, for sure.
It's a certain type that becomes a media producer magnate type person. Like it's usually not like please you go first.
Yeah. So here's the section where their conflict is laid out. Laurent, this is on page 91. There's like no light anymore here. So Laurent had dealings with him, Alex, on several occasions. Not content with ridiculing and abusing him in front of an audience, Alex had managed to get a hold of his cell phone number, and once, when he was completely shit-faced, he called in the middle of the night to insult him. The guy was deranged. He knew nothing. And then later on, he talks about the hyena, when she talks about her work for Dopalet, which we'll get to in a second, she references that she's been hired several times to attack Alex and to like try and take him down through all these fake personas that she's created, which is very fun as well. But he's sort of set up as our kind of quasi-villain here already.
Great. You want to say anything about that?
I don't know. I don't have a question. I just kind of orient where we were.
Well, sounds good. Yes.
Yeah. See you next time.
He's a prick.
I really love that the hyena is like a consistent, I mean, this is the second time that the hyena has come up, but I love that. It's like a little Easter egg for her fans who've like read her other stuff. And the hyena was such a nice character in Apocalypse Baby that to get like more information about her and for her. Yeah, I think, I'm like, what are their pronouns? But I do think the hyena is like, should get given a really fun role in this book.
Absolutely. Let's connect these two and then go back to, I think it's Sylvie is the middle one. Or no, I guess the hyena does come next. So can you describe especially for Brian or for anyone listening, like the hyena's character from Apocalypse Baby?
So the hyena is a private investigator hired in Apocalypse Baby to find somebody's daughter who's gone missing. And she's like this cool lesbian who's like, is just like a badass generally. And I don't remember like all of the details except that she does find the young girl and like saves the day.
And she has like a partner with her along the way too, I think, right?
I think we get more about her like love life in Apocalypse Baby.
That's what I was too. And that she's like tough as nails, like just sort of like in that space where she's not going to work in an office, and she's like of this sort that does things to be able to make money, and being a private investigator, she's like a Jessica Jones punk.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I've
got a quick, super fun, I think it's funny sidebar about reoccurring characters. So I have a reoccurring character that goes through different literary works I do named Doug Feldick. And it's this like super, like just insular sommelier guy that like loves himself, but he ends up in a lot of different things. And I was emailing somebody about my daughter going into first grade. like this test she has to take to go into the school or something like that. And the lady comes back to me and says, Brian, I just tried to like send you an email and it came back as Doug Feldick. Do I have the right email? Yeah, that's the character's name, Doug Feldick. He pops up and all this different stuff. And I had made a Doug Feldick account. So like down that way I have it like it's owned, so like nobody can take it down the line.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to like disconnect it from my email apparently. So anytime if you have like the Google suite, because I don't use Gmail, and like everything kicks back to Doug Feldick apparently.
That's actually a perfect segue too into the hyena section. That her job at this point isn't necessarily as a private investigator, but as someone who boosts or ruins reputations online. Yeah. And she creates a series of fake personas that talk in different ways, interact in different ways, are from different locations, has a whole code for them. And that is where Doug Feldick came from, is that Doug Feldick and Greg Underwood and what was the third? What was Kaya's name?
I forget the last name, but Sonia. But
it was Sonia.
Yeah.
Right?
By the way, I was trying to impress this like headmaster, and who's Doug Feldick?
Good. Oh, Brian dropped out.
His computer was like, "Stop saying Feldick over and over, please." Yeah, and we're just gonna shut it down.
We're gonna close this out. But yeah, that was a not short-lived, but lived fake podcast that Brian, Kaya, and I did for a time.
The 10 teeth. What was it? It was rock in your mouth.
Rock in your mouth.
I think about that not irregularly. I think about it like every so often, and it makes me giggle.
And that's where Doug Feldick as a character came up. And so that's where I hit this section too. I was like, it's so funny that Doug Feldick, or that we had done something not entirely similar, but similar. But like, I think that her section is really interesting for that, in the way that like she's like goes from being a private investigator of this school to being like a professional internet troll. And then like her comments where she's like, nobody pays to like get buzz, they just pay to take revenge. It's like way easier to like shit on people and ruin their reputation than it is to like create interest in like a work or a whatever.
Right. I don't know. I think like this book is fun, or this section in the book is fun too, because you're starting to see the overlap between all the characters and like why we're getting so many different characters and how they're all kind of revolving around Alex Bleach, and then eventually we'll start to revolve around Vernon, and it's a nice like everything coming together moment. Yeah,
it's like right on that. Especially in the section, it feels like it's right at that cusp too, because we do the overlap between Dopalet and Hyena. And you see, and Xavier goes to, it's like an Altman film. Xavier goes to Dopalet, Dopalet goes to Hyena, and then we get another jump cut. But they are starting to all connect.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real power of like the propulsion of this book, is that seeing those connections, or kind of knowing that they're going to hook up at some way, but not entirely sure like how or when or why.
Right. Yeah. And I don't even remember how, like, what note this book ends on, but I remember getting to the end of this one and being like, oh my God, this is a huge project, because there's like, you can feel that you're like just at the very beginning.
Yep. I'm not going to spoil it, but I do remember that.
I need to read the rest.
Yeah. The last two are, I think I prefer the second and third volumes to the first one. And not because I think this one's necessarily weaker, but like once all the stage is set and you hit a certain point, then it's like go, and it's super, super fun to see like the next two acts to it.
Right. I mean, this is very much a stage setting book, which I think is why like you have to like tell people when you sell it to them in a bookstore or whatever, like you have to be invested in reading all of them, because it's mostly stage setting in this one, and then it's like going to go on. But yeah, I don't know. It is fun to read nevertheless, though.
Oh, I agree. And I love the Hyena's perspective. Even like when she's talking about her job, and she's like, it's the dumbest job she had ever done, but it's well paid when you consider how little brain power it requires. There's like a goal in life, I think.
Yeah, and it's like funny, the contrast between like the hyena, who is like extremely smart and intelligent and finds these like very weird ways to make money, and then Vernon, who's like on the street and needs to like, get into people's apartments somehow and like needs to like trick people into giving him things and whatever. And she's just like so good at getting exactly what she wants and what she needs with the least amount of effort. And he is like such a, you know, dullard or whatever the word is.
Absolutely. I did want to go back for 1 second because I forgot I skipped over this. But the part of the Dopalet thing that I think is actually interesting is that like he's a prick and he's like a bad person. And like to emphasize why he's bad, even in this moment in time, when the hyena's talking, she says like, case in point, that prick Laurent Dopalet, who has not stopped calling since last night, has shelled out a small fortune for her to troll actresses who do not respond favorably to his advances, colleagues who have or might have a hit on their hands, and former associates who have turned their backs on him. He's consistently adding names to his hit list, and she is his voodoo priestess. So she's working out his like both like sexual revenge and work jealousies and various other things. And then you go back to him, and there's a few funny things that he has. This one I really love. He's like talking about like growing up, and he says he realizes it has nothing to do with manners. He talks about like he's listening to this woman go on about her movie, and he's like, I'm never going to publish your fucking movie. Nobody wants to read movies from like or watch movies from like old women, and it's like really derogatory and like condescending and shitty. And then he's like, he says, oh, well, you know, my friend died, or Alex Bleach died, this acquaintance died. And she doesn't miss a beat and just keeps going with her pitch. And he's like, realizes it has nothing to do with manners. In his day, children were expected to become social animals, so they learn empathy. To show sympathy when someone appeared to be sad, for example, if the subject was intelligent, he quickly learned that showing sympathy could pay off, especially if you wanted something from someone. But then Facebook came along, and this generation of 30-somethings is made up of solipsistic psychopaths verging on insanity, naked ambition stripped of any sense of legitimacy. And I'm like, fuck yeah, you're right. I'm on board with that. But then he goes back to his office at some point, and he's like having Aeneas like look through all of the YouTube creators, because he's like, you know, his daughter is talking about this. He's like, shit, like people put this YouTube videos up or TikTok or whatever it would be nowadays, and they get like 52 million views. And we don't get that for most of the movies that we're making. And that this is a new thing that you need to have our pulse on. And that's very interesting. Like he's bad, but he's also like semi-nuanced bad.
It is funny too, the way that technology is referenced in this. It's so dated already, but it's like such a beautiful, like people are going to be studying this book in anthropology classes of like, how are people using social media at this time? Like the way Facebook is used in this is so weird. The way like the way that Vernon uses Facebook as his like point of contact with people, and the people are like sending him sexy photos on Facebook.
But it is 2014. And going back to 2014, like Instagram's still like nascent. Twitter's been around for a few years, but is mostly like a hodgepodge of nonsense. Not that I think it's changed, but like it is. But that's it. What's interesting is that we just did this book in my class. I think I talked about this last week too. And can you see that right?
Yeah.
So it's I don't know, Mel Renor. Or I don't know how to pronounce anything. Fragments of an Infinite Memory, My Life with the Internet. And it's written by someone who turns out to be like my exact age. And it's like their philosophical text on like the relationship of memory to storage and the internet and like pictures and images and tracking and things that you don't have to deal with anymore and ways that that's impacted you. And it's all Facebook. And it's the same thing where I was like, this is so weird that it's only Facebook. Like all the things that he's talking about are more true now. And if you took them and implanted them into the social media of 2021 instead of the social media of 2016, it would be like an expanded, much grander argument. And yet it's still like the seeds are still there. Like it's a weird relation to the internet, not entirely like how David Lynch doesn't know how telephones work, but like it's sort of like that. Like it's like this is a stand-in for a lot of other technology things in a weird way, or social media things, and it's easy. But I thought that, yeah, I think that that's really interesting too. The Facebook is the go-to, but this is the first time that it does reference. I was going to mention that too, that we know it's 2014.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that she's talking about Facebook in 2014. I just like, it makes me laugh.
I know, yeah.
Like this like old guy who like he like has nowhere to be and nowhere to live, and he's like hitting on young women and like, add me on Facebook.
There was, yeah, and he's using internet cafes.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that shows up in this book of like the moment that those were there and then they were gone because they just weren't necessary anymore. And like that, and also this book, which I keep talking about but it does have an interesting point that like, if you look back to the beginning of the internet, starting around 95 through like 2000 is where it starts to take off. There's a lot of books, philosophical books and other like cultural criticism books that sort of hint at the internet as something that's coming, but never reference it because it didn't exist. And he's like, you know, an anthropologist would go back or someone who's researching things would go back and look at these books and be like, why the fuck weren't they referencing the internet? It existed then, but it didn't really exist. So it was like all these kind of like nascent thoughts related to that version of social media. And in that way, like things become dated so fast because that social media jumps so fast, so quick and so many times that even if you're like, oh yeah, I get how this could kind of work. Like Facebook as a spiral, as like a sort of, not spiral, but as like a spider web of like how he can find people to like let him stay in their rooms through like friends of friends and through that sort of networking web nature of it is very 2014 and is very much like an issue with technology at that point. But now it's like broadcast. Twitter is all about broadcast and being about short bursts that are available to everyone rather than the one-to-one connection of this web of friends, quote unquote. I don't know. I'm just babbling now.
I mean, I will also say I do think the French are a little behind us because I do remember in the summer of 2019 being on a train in France and some creep on the train being like, add me on Facebook, and his name on Facebook was DJ Dildophonics, and I was like, who is like hitting on people on trains by being like, here's my Facebook? So maybe the French are just like still in that zone.
They have their Minitels all fired up.
So
the Minitels come up in pretty things.
They come up everywhere. Every French book I've read recently, King Kong Theory, they're in this book too. The Minitels like show up everywhere. It's so funny. And there's such a wonky looking image. Like I looked it up because I was like, what did this actually look like? And I looked it up and I was like, oh, that's like that computer that was in my library in junior high school. With like plastic over the keys so that kids didn't spit on them, and like looks like this like nonsense, and like all the font is green. That
comes up actually in Anne Garreta's books too. Now that I think about it, she talks about the like green font on the black screen when she's writing to her like lovers in Not One Day.
Yep. See, like what? Yeah, the French had that. That's
French
because we didn't really have those, right?
I don't think so.
Brian, did you remember anything? Like you're always knowledgeable about these weird things.
What, black screens with green font?
Well, no, but Minitel things where it's like a communication computer essentially.
No, I mean if you ran DOS, I mean you'd have that, but that's old stuff. I do like how there's like these kind of, they seem like archaic references, but it works perfect I think with the characters because everybody in this is fossilized in some way, whether it's like in the first section we read, there was that wonderful description of how this one character hated men that are getting older, where they have like these pale, thin thighs, and their testicles are like fossilized turtle heads. It was like this wonderful image. And then this one, it's like someone talking about, I had sand under my breasts. And like I never had to mess with that before. And like, my body's sagging. I'm looking at like, I'm watching things fall apart, and like you're seeing people's lives fall apart, and their friends are dying, and he tries to pick up on a girl, like add me on Facebook. She's like, I don't do that. Like,
your name is Vernon. What? Do you not have any money?
Yeah, but I like the way that it matches the way like their bodies are falling apart, their relationships are falling apart, and they're still trying to connect and like be together, but it's just sad and terrible. In this funny kind of way, and I think this also kind of highlights it.
I'm going to posit something that I don't know that I believe in, but I'm going to say it now anyways. This is the moment, 43 minutes in, whiskey coming. So is that part of the setup of this is that, oh yeah, the DOCs showing up in there is amazing. Ty Seagall is the other band that shows up. Someone in the comments is mentioning this. But okay, so I think at this point in time, a lot of the characters, there's a few characters we'll meet that are younger. The characters of this generation are the ones who have had the success of the youth. Like they were successful and they were in the bands in their youth. They're cool in their youth. They had the records in the youth, and their youth is past. And they are now reaching that middle-age point where like things sag, things don't work. You like have these problems with your relationships because you're just going to have problems with your relationships as you've gone through them for this long. There's all these like things that come up. The kids the child rearing, the children that have left, which we'll talk about in a second. All that kind of stuff is like getting you to the point of being like, my youth is gone, and now what? And then the next volumes are going to set up a thing of a now what. Is what I'm going to postulate, that this is the beginning of that. It doesn't always have to be a pure decline. It has to be a transformation of like, what do you do when you start realizing that you can't compete with the 20-year-old bass player anymore, and you're not in this game in that way, and he's not able to like have these charms that he had when he was younger. Like, what do you do then? And this is really exploring that contrast, but I don't think it has to stay that way. I don't think it has to be a pure entropy.
Yeah, but it is nice too to think about like if she's known for writing about people on the margins, then like the group on the margins in this book is like people who are getting older, like people who like don't have their place in society anymore because they're not like hot and young and cool, and they haven't like figured out how to be in their old world anymore. And I really like that she's like turning her focus of like the people that we don't usually get in literature to these like down and out like 50 somethings who haven't figured out their shit anymore.
Or even better is Sylvie as a representation of the females of that generation, the one that you're talking about with the sand under her breast. So Sylvie's like at home, her son has like left for college, doesn't really come back, and she's like, what I do is I spend my days playing Candy Crush and dumb shit, and like I'm still attractive, but like things aren't quite right anymore, you know? And one of the things that's interesting, this is where I'm gonna segue. So she fits that in a lot of ways, and she talks about being like a good addict back in her youth, but then like she's not anymore. There's a lot of functional alcoholism and functional drug use in this section, which I really like. But there's one interesting part where we're talking beforehand about British versus American versions of this book. And I've read the British versions of 2 and 3 and the American version of 1. Okay. And so the audiobook for this volume is based on the British one, like you said, Brian. And so there's a section where when Sylvie's talking, she says, back in the days of Vernon, the name Revolver daubed in red letters on the black shop front. It was a different life. She was not yet a yummy mummy, is the words in the British version. And here it says she was not a MILF. And I think that MILF is a fucking terrible word now. Like, I wouldn't have thought this until now, but I realized that a yummy mummy is the woman, and a MILF is it creates an I. There's a person that wants to fuck that woman as a thing, like specifically. And that aggressiveness of this term is a much more American term, but also includes this violence, or not, I mean, it's not supposed to be violent, but it sort of is. Yummy mummy doesn't have the same connotation to me. It has a more like attractive, but I want to fuck you, mother, I want to fuck. I'd like to fuck. Like that seems a lot more like there. And I hadn't noticed that until Kaya pointed it out, and she was like super pissed that they had changed it. And like, I think I can agree with that.
I wonder, I wish I could find it in the French. You don't happen to know?
It's in Sylvie's section, and which begins with her sitting cross-legged in a large office. You might find Candy Crush might be on the first. Look for Candy Crush. And then it's like the next, it's like 2 pages later. Okay, I'm gonna investigate.
I must be close, but what's like in the same? Oh, here. Oh, weird. The French is just elle n'était pas encore maman. She wasn't yet a mother.
Well, she was a mother though. Like,
wait, this is so weird. Am I looking at the right line? It was another life.
Yeah.
C'était une autre vie. Elle n'était pas encore maman.
Yes.
Yeah,
She was not
yet a MILF. And that tracks with this. If you said that she was a mom, she already has her kids. Like, she's talking about how sad she is that her kid has left.
I don't understand. Why would it just say elle n'était pas encore maman? Because that's not, is that slang for like hot mom, or because maman is just mom?
It wouldn't, if it just says mom, it wouldn't be interesting. It wouldn't fit the character. It wouldn't make sense exactly.
I've never heard maman used that way, but I'm looking at my French slang dictionary. Anyway, all this to say, if someone called me a yummy mummy, I would probably have them arrested because that's horrific. I think MILF, like, I don't know. I don't think it's so bad.
I don't think it's as aggressive as you're taking it, because it's
I think because it creates an I, it creates another individual.
No, but it's basically just like at this point, it's like just an adjective.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a hot person that happens to be a mother.
Should we not interrogate adjectives? Is this not what our generation is all supposed to be doing right now? Is asking questions about why these words are normalized?
Because didn't it come into the nomenclature with like American Pie? Like
yes.
Way back in like 2000, maybe? Like it's an old word. It's been around for a long time. As far as, slang goes. But I don't know. I guess, is it similar to the word like thought that gets used now? Right? That high schoolers use? Thought? Like,
yeah, my kids use that.
That hoe over there, is that what that means?
I agree with Brian. I don't think it's so bad. I don't think it's like that.
It's horrific when you think about it, but it's just used very just like whatever. Like, oh,
which I'm more woke than both of you. Then is that I think that Yummy Mummy is less offensive than MILF. I think
Yummy Mummy. Yeah, Mummy Mummy is gross and therefore really offensive.
No way.
Don't call me yummy. What does that mean? It's gross. Call me hot.
Okay, comment. Yummy Mummy evokes a cartoon wolf licking his chops and howling, and thus is kind of funny and endearing. MILF does seem a lot more demeaning of the object without any self-mockery of the speaker. And this is from Kate Sherrod.
But I think it's
less, on your side, Kate.
I think it's less. I think it's less that it's it's just the word we use, like Brian was saying. It's just become a stand-in for like a hot mom, and therefore it doesn't like have that aggressive connotation because it's so normalized now. We don't have another word. What else was the translator supposed to use? We don't have another word.
You could use hot mom,
but hot mom wouldn't like quite fit, I think.
She wasn't okay. So I mean, I'll disagree with you on that because it would work here. It's like
I'm not a fan of MILF. I'm not a fan of Yummy Mummy. I don't like any of it, but I'm just saying maybe it's not as bad. I don't know. I think they're all kind of gross. I agree, but again, I'm just saying I think it's something that's become so normalized. It's like a giant like porn category at this point. Like that has its own button to click on. People, I don't think people think what it actually means. Like you're saying with the I, and then the aggression of it.
The activity of that becomes more prevalent. Yeah. It creates it creates the male gaze as something that, or gaze, in which I hate the word gaze, and I never use that. But like it does create a gaze in the way that Yummy Mummy sort of does, but sort of doesn't.
Yes, but I think it's similar to
I can envision a woman in Britain saying, "I'm a Yummy Mummy." I can't imagine someone being like, "I'm a fucking MILF."
Stop saying Yummy Mummy, dude. It makes
I know it a million times. It is the title of this episode.
Nobody would ever say, I am a yummy mummy. Give me a break. That's so bad.
It is like a title of a UK book. Like a book in Britain. This is very common.
Can I just say, I wonder what happened here. I'm reading the French. The French does not say mother, like hot mom. The French just says mom. And I'm wondering if because Yummy Mummy is like a thing in the UK, that's what the translator chose to use. And then that was like further miscommunicated in English because we were trying to change Yummy Mummy, but really it's just mom.
But thank you for getting us stuck right here, Chad. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I have a lot of issues with this. I have a lot more to say.
No, that's fine.
I am very for Sylvia as a character, especially because she's kind of a bitch to like her friends. She's sort of too clingy to Vernon, and that's a whole different problem. But she's like loves to gossip with her friends and drink rosé and play too much Candy Crush and complain about everyone behind their backs, and that's fucking fun. That's a character you don't get to see. You don't get to see her that often in this way, where it's like endearing.
Well, it's nice too because she's a bitch, like she's so awful with her friends, but then also you see her be like really vulnerable with Vernon. She's sending him these photos. She's like taking all the photos when she can finally get the good light, even though she feels old, and she's like putting on all these different outfits. So she's simultaneously really bitchy and really pathetic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like that space doesn't exist very often in books or in representation in TV shows or movies. And that's what's really nice. So even here, it's like, Sylvia's a bitch. She's a Parisian. What she most appreciates about her girlfriends is the ability to rip them apart as soon as their backs are turned. that's fun.
Of course you like that, Chad.
What's that?
Of course you like this character.
I like characters who are complicated. I like characters who go against type. I don't understand like.
You like to gossip.
What's that?
You like to gossip.
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's every character.
Gossip.
Every character in this book so far, you get like a multifaceted. What I really like about it is everybody has warts about them, and they're told in such this like nice, like matter of fact way. Like, this is just who I am. Like, I find myself liking every single character and hating every single character, which makes it really, I don't know, just it makes it really fun and engaging. And I like seeing like what parts of me that are bad that I can see in each character. Like, yeah, sometimes I am a little bit like that. That's not very good. Like, it just makes me like, it makes me recognize how complicated it is to be a human being. And she does it in such a great way between these characters. I just really enjoy it.
Let's circle back to Sylvie's self-confidence. Here's another paragraph about her. She herself has slept with most of her girlfriend's regular partners. The guy would have to be hideous or have serious personal hygiene issues for her not to at least make the attempt. What could be better than sleeping with the boyfriend of her best friend, especially when they seem so happy together? A quick blowjob in the elevator cures the jealousy brought on by other people's happiness. Fuck yeah! Love it. I love how warty and strange, or not strange, how warty and like honest these characters are. And that they aren't it's not polished around the edges. It's not like soft focusy. This is not an Oprah book.
Yeah, and I think like to what Brian was saying, you see the different aspects of them because they all get like their own chapters where it's kind of told from their perspective, and then they all come up in the other characters' chapters. So you're seeing them from the other characters' perspectives too, and it makes this really nice like full picture of how other people see them, and then how they really are, and how they see themselves.
Yeah, everybody's sad. Everybody's vulnerable. Everybody has something they're like good at, or what makes them interesting. Like, they're just really just well done, like rendered characters.
So to skip ahead because we're running low, there's two sections left, and I'll skip really fast. One is Vernon being like, "Fuck Sylvie, she's like always up in my shit, sending me messages and wanting me to do this." So he blocks her on Facebook, and it's like done with her, and it's like. Whatever, and there's this great line that he has. The internet has created a parallel space-time continuum where history is written hypnotically at a speed much too frantic to allow the heart to introduce an element of nostalgia, which is interesting and could be unpacked. Then we get to Lydia Bazooka, whose real name is not Lydia Bazooka, but Lydia, who is a writer who is the one that references Ty Seagall, which I mentioned a second ago in terms of the music background. There's a lot of music things that run throughout this. The OCs was mentioned in the comments earlier. I actually like parts of the VOC, so I'm not sure what that objection was. But this is all part of a subset of music that I do like. Anyways, Lydia writes music criticism, was friends with Alex Bleach for a while, was like covering him, then posted something that is kind of ill-defined in here, but seems to be like I'm obsessed with Alex Bleach. He's amazing. She talks about how he's one of the people who never fucked her, and she's disappointed in that. And then he was like, "No, I won't have anything to do with you. I don't want you to interview me ever again." And then before his death, she does interview him one last time, and she has now negotiated a way for I think it's $6,000 is what it's referenced to in here, but make it euros, make it whatever, 6,000 euros, write a book on his life. And so she's getting in touch with Vernon, who's making her really hot because he likes and comments on her Facebook, and this turns her on. And she's also like a sexually awake, sexually active, sexually like positive, sex positive individual. And this whole section involves a little subset of that, where like she goes to meet this guy. They both have like partners, and she knows that they're gonna like make out and fuck, and like she's very, very forward and direct and honest about that too. Oh yeah, Lydia Lunch would make sense. But like as what she's named after. But she's the last character in our section that we get today.
I can't tell if that's your baby or your cat.
The fucking cat. The babies aren't here.
What I really liked about that scene too was there's this building anticipation for the affair. And then how just like disappointing and like blah it was.
Yeah, although
sexy, and she makes it just not really that sexy. I thought it was really great stroke.
I think you're wrong. I think that the part where they fuck is not sexy, but the part where they make out is, and and he fingers her is wicked sexy.
No, I know. There's this building anticipation.
Yeah, the building part, yeah.
Everything was like this letdown of.
And then she's like, "Oh yeah, he's too nice."
You're like, oh.
I like her character too. That's not a character you see very often.
And that's not like a. I mean, you see that in TV shows, I think, more than in books. That like a disappointing sex scene. You don't get a lot of disappointing sex scenes in books.
Unless you're reading Franzen. Hey-o!
I don't.
Fact. So I don't know. And she ends with a funny bit that should be replaced too. And this is one of those where you said things were dated. I meant to bring this up earlier. Ty Seagall does rock to our commenters that are pointing out right now. Here's another dated cultural reference. She would like to track down the asshat who came up with the idea that every headline on the Yahoo homepage should be a riddle. The quote, incredible discovery at Chicago airport. The psychopath who came up with the most irritating clickbait formula imaginable by not telling his readers what the article is about. Replace Yahoo with BuzzFeed and that joke lands a little bit harder.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yahoo exclamation point is a thing that I don't, although I probably in 2014, I probably was going there because they host every fantasy baseball team I have. And
in the description, do click the link for the one trick to help you lose belly fat. We have it in our link below. One food you should be eating to boost your metabolism.
We're brought to you by Colon Broom. It will help you lose 17 pounds in 3 weeks. $59.99 per bottle. You guys have a favorite line? Because I do, and it's really offensive.
Well, I'm looking at the French. What's yours?
Yeah, you should do. Brian, do you have one?
I do. I'll do one from the hyena since we all seem to have liked her. Let me go back and find where it was. This just made me chuckle. On page 99, she refuses to use leet speak, replacing E with 3 and systematically forgetting to make adjectives agree. This is her only vanity. Otherwise, she does what she is asked. I thought that was fun.
I like that too. My one is from Sylvie's section where she's talking about her friends and talking shit about them. And she's talking about, I don't know what her friend's name is, Lori. But with a face like the back end of a bus and the manners of a trucker, her only hope of getting fucked occasionally is the rise of functional alcoholism.
Oh, dear.
That's, again, a line that you could see in a book or a movie, but not necessarily coming from a woman of this stature who's like in this place. And I love that. You got anything, Emma? You should read it in French.
Well, I mean, this is just the first thing I'm coming to. We talked about it a little bit, but when he says, you know, friend me on Facebook, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, friend me on Facebook. And she's like, oh, I'm not really on Facebook. And he says, well, if you're on it, my name is Vernon SUBUTEX. And she says, what is that stupid nickname? Did you get it out of Harry Potter? Which is just like a further like dating of her and her age. And then he immediately is like, you know nothing about it. You know nothing. What's your name? And it's like so silly. Like for like just so many teenagers nowadays who are just like, oh, is that from Harry Potter? And it's just, we're all dating ourselves so much.
Harry Potter's for old people. Like my students are younger than Harry Potter. So Kate Sherrod I'll add this in here in the comments leaves. My favorite line is, quote, when you're young, you believe that time heals. She has since learned that you have to amputate to survive.
Nice. Great line.
Very great line. So anyways, Emma, what books do you recommend all your books that are coming out or that are available or that you want people to go out and get, and where should they order them?
Oh, God. Okay. So we'll order everything from riffraffpvd.com.
With Dogecoin.
We do not accept Dogecoin at this time. But yeah, riffraffpvd. And then, so buy Pretty Things by Virginie Despentes, buy A Country for Dying by Abdel Taya, and then next month buy In Concrete by Anne Garreta.
Brian, anything you want to pitch or recommend or tell people to purchase, watch, do anything?
Yeah, buy Pretty Things.
That's kind. Thank you. What about, we have your book, Brian.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you could buy Brian's book.
Or you can buy my book from her bookstore.
From my bookstore, yeah.
Right on, right on. Thank you, Emma, so much.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back next week. I don't know what page we go up to, but I guess it's around 226 or so. I'll link to the whole schedule in the show notes, but it's always about 70, 75 pages. So we'll see you then, and keep following all these random characters. And I guess that's all. Take care, everyone.
Bye.